Kia ora tātou, nau mai haramai ki tēnei hui miharora wātu ki te ia koutou. Welcome everyone, great to see us all together, shoulder to shoulder, ngākau ki te ngākau, pukehiwi ki te pukehiwi, heart to heart, shoulder to shoulder. I've, with the blessing of the chair, just asked if it was appropriate to deliver a special karakia given the passing of Joe Hawke, a great Aucklander, a great New Zealander, a Māori leader. And but before we do that, I thought I'd just invite us all to turn to page 3 and just go through our karakia tīmatanga together. If I could just lead that. Whakatakato te hau ki te uru, whakatakato te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hiaki ana te atukura, he tio, he hoka, he hauhu, ti hei maurioda. Kui ika nātu ko te kaua nui, ko te kaua ro, ko te kaua tiki tiki, ko te kaua tuatahi. Ko te kaua tua ngā huru, ko te kaua tapu, ki o matua nui. Kia mau ki te tika, kia mau ki te pono, kia mau ki te aroha, ki te whai ao, ki te ao marama, ti hei maurioda. Ina tata nei, kua mate tētahi rangatira o te ao Māori me te ao whānui wiki, i tēnei wiki. Ara, ko te rangatira ko Joe Hawke. Tēnei wā, i rongi te tono o tēnei rōpū, ka takato tēnei, whakatakato tēnei mihi aroha ki aia. Ko te rangatira Joe, haere, haere atu rā. Ko tēnei te rā nehu, mū, me tō whānui hoki o Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei, i muri tō haringa, i riro ki tua o te ārai. E te rangatira, aroha ki a koe, he mihi tautoko, he mihi nunui tēnei, e pāna ki tō mahi whakaharahara, i te whakakaha tō tātou, kaone, ki me kaurau. E te rangatira Joe, he rangatira, he pononga, he rangatira. E te rangatira, haere, haere atra ki te tara o tūpuna. Haere, haere atra. If I could just ask us maybe to stand for a moment's silence, just while we recognise Joe, and also reflecting on the fact that his ancestor, Te Apiha Kāwau, gifted 1,400 hectares of land to Governor Hobson to establish Tāmaki Makaurau, Auckland. And that was really the foundation of our city. And over generations, progressively, the land holding of Ngāti Whātua disintegrated into the Urupa at Okahu Bay. And in 1978-77, Matua Joe Hawke took the stand with the people of Ngāti Whātua to not allow construction at Takaparapau, Bastion Point, to commence on building a high-end residential area, given that the land had been gifted by Ngāti Whātua to the Crown for government defence purposes. So the stand that was taken eventually resulted in the land being returned, and it is now a koha that Ngāti Whātua has opened up for all Aucklanders and all New Zealanders. So taking this moment just to reflect on that spirit of generosity by Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei, the original tupuna that gifted the land, Te Āpihai Kāwau, and through the generations to the efforts today of the descendants of Te Āpihai. Just a brief moment of silence, please. Mai e te tipua, mai e te tawhito, mai e te kauhi o ngariki, mai e te tawhiwhi atu kia rongo. Tēnā koutou, kia ora mai tātou katoa. Thank you, everyone.
My very brief acknowledgement to Joe is to thank him and all of the elders, some of whom, of course, many of whom have passed, who made that incredibly important stand, which I think was a real turning point in our modern country's history. My father was the Minister of Lands at the time, and it took him a long time to be persuaded of the error of his ways, but he was. Now, we have apologies from Nicole Rosie and also Councillor Cashmore and I think Councillor Darby. Or is Councillor Darby here for the first? Okay, he's just here for the first period. We have managed to put most of our Auckland Transport meetings on the same day as the governing body meeting, for which one or two of us need to, it was not deliberate, but it actually did happen, and we will make sure that as we move into the next 3 years of the Auckland Council, that we take account of that, because it is very helpful to have our councillors here. The reason that I was late this morning was I actually witnessed a quite a significant accident on Viaduct Harbour Avenue. It was a man slightly younger than me, and I just say slightly, on a motorised skateboard who was fully kitted out with the safety gear and came off on going around a corner, and I had to go and see that he was okay and help him, pick him up and put him on the side of the road, having had similar accidents myself on bicycles. He's okay, but he's quite badly knocked. And what it sort of reminded me, first of all, I did a safety check of him, then I did a safety check of the vehicle, and he clearly had didn't have enough tyre depth on his skateboard. But what it reminded me was many issues, which is that vulnerable road users are everywhere today, and human beings are incredibly inventive. This is a pretty amazing way to be getting around town, unless you come off, and then of course you've got vehicles coming either way, and you know what looks like a very athletic, and to say that the man was fully kitted out with all the safety gear. Something can actually happen. Accidents do happen. Human beings are fragile, and we need to take account of that. You know, when we're actually thinking about our system for the future. He could have been on the footpath, and then he wouldn't have had the hazard of the cars coming either way. But otherwise, the same thing would have happened because it was a matter of a slippery road and inadequate tyre depth. So there's probably a few more lessons out of that, but it would certainly sort of knock me to thinking. So I was pretty impressed until I saw what happened and he came off. So look, that just really takes me to just a comment that I'd like to make, which is I just think we need to look at bringing some of our safety reporting further forward in the agenda. Okay, so we'll just have a little think about how we might do that. I'm not going to sort of say next meeting or anything like that, but I would just say that by next year we need to have our safety reporting in the right part of the agenda, because we all know that as far as we're concerned, people are first and safety is first. So if I can, that probably with those comments, I think we've actually got as usual, a very full agenda today. If I can just ask you to make sure that you speak into the microphones, which I think are live, whether or not they are turned on. We do have Wally, Shane, Andrew, Izzy, Councillor Darby, Tony Seymour, and Miney McCullum, and also Wayne on here attending by video, and so we want to make sure that they are properly included in the meeting. Could I ask one person to put up their hand and just keep an eye on the screen, particularly with Wayne and Izzy, but with any of our Chief Executive and the Executive Leadership team, if they've got comments to make. It's just quite hard to keep my eye on two things at once, so who's going to do that? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Abby. All right, are there any late items for general business? We've got the interest register, which is set out in board books. Are there any changes to those interests? Okay. Is there anything on today's agenda that anyone wants to declare an interest in? Okay, thank you. Now we have the minutes of the meeting of the 31st of March. Very good minutes. Are there any corrections to those minutes or additions to those minutes? They can be accepted as a record of that meeting. Is that agreed by the board? Yes.
Right.
We have the action register, CRL briefing for our, I presume that's for the next meeting of the board, and Tamaki Makaurau safety governance members to present. When is that?
Madam Chair, I can probably take that one. So look, there was a report due to come to the board first, which summarised particularly in respect of police enforcement. And that work has just taken a little bit longer. We wanted to give the board quite a bit of as much granularity as we could, not only on a whole of Auckland basis, but on a district basis, plus also give you some insights in terms of the value for money we're getting out of that investment. Even though it's not cash coming from council, I think it's really important that you have visibility on the total, the bang for buck we're getting from that. And that's just taken a little bit longer. So our proposal was to bring that to the next board, and so that the board is fully informed before we engage with the New Zealand Police.
Okay. Thank you, Shane. So that's the action registered noted. Let's now move to the business report. Over to you, Shane.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and tēnā koutou e ngā rangatira. Sorry I can't be with you today. It's sorry, but it is for a purpose. I don't want to give you what I've got. It's not COVID, but it is another virus, and it's not pleasant. So so there is a good reason why I'm not with you in the room. If we turn to the business report, just a couple of comments, full agenda, so I'm going to keep it short and sharp. In terms of the business report, you'll see two things I want to call out. The first is that there's been lots of milestones over the period covered in that report, with the most visible and high profile being, first of all, the announcement of the deal with EV Maritime, which you're all across in terms of the 2 electric ferries, the opening of the Tamaki Drive cycleway. While it was complete in December, COVID, Omicron and other things have made it difficult to do that. We did that over the period. The gifting of Te Reo station names for the CRL stations, where we partnered with CRLL and worked with Mana Whenua to come up with what I think some fantastic names for the 4 CRL stations. And lastly, of course, the opening of the Northern Busway extension. So look, from a personal perspective, it's fantastic to have been a part of this over the last month and to be able to celebrate with our teams, our partners and our elected representatives. So nice to celebrate, and kind of also shows the determination of our teams to continue to deliver through what has been a really, really difficult time. The second thing I want to call out, page 12 of the report, or 32 of board books, is the Rodney targeted rate. It doesn't feature heavily in a lot of what we talk about. Some of the older board members, not older as in older as in terms of length of service. Um, no, Wayne. We'll
No way to get out of that one.
Yeah, you're not walking back from that, Shane.
just as well I'm not in the room. We'll recall that in 2018, the Rodney local board promoted a targeted rate for ratepayers in the Rodney area. It went through consultation with the long-term plan, and there was also regional fuel tax at the time and other things. They were successful in that up. I guess from my perspective, they deserve an enormous amount of recognition for what they did at that time, because it took a lot of political courage. Not only has that targeted rate actually meant that we've been able to deliver improvements, footpaths, public transport hubs, services that wouldn't have otherwise occurred, it's also enabled us to deliver a better relationship with the Rodney local board. So I really wanted to call that out, because it's one of those, there's small things that we do which seem small in terms of some of the big things that we do, but the impact in terms of our communities, in terms of our local board, should never be underestimated. And lastly, so that's what's in the report. Lastly, what is not in the report is, and you may have seen some commentary on this or media about it, really pleased to confirm that AT has been selected for about the third or fourth year in a row as a finalist in the New Zealand Energy Excellence Awards, this year in 2 categories rather than 1 category, as has been the case previously. The first one is for the LED streetlight program, not hugely sexy in many people's minds, but hugely successful in terms of the carbon emissions that it reduces, and of course the OPEX savings, $12 million a year in OPEX savings. So that's the first one, and the second one is the hydrogen bus project. So some really good stories through the period. With that, Madam Chair, nothing else I want to touch on. Happy to take any questions with the help of the team.
Right, okay. Now, questions and comments from the board. This is rather tactical, but I still thought it was, I was interested in the discussion about the Auckland Transport Operations Centre being expanded, travel information team located there. I just wondered if I could be, if you don't know today, that's fine, we'll be informed later. I wanted to know what the single source of the truth is in Auckland in terms of smart information on cell phones, that kind of information about the way that one might get from A to B. Is there a single app which will give you public transport, cycle, drive, parking, all of the things that we are either directly or with Waka Kotahi managing? I know that our ATF is pretty amazing, but I just use that mainly for public transport. So is there a single source of the truth which also takes into account people might drive part of the journey or all of the journey for some reason?
Madam Chair, I'll try and answer that first, and then and Vanessa might want to follow up. But clearly, no, there is not a single source of truth. There is a multiple different sources you can go to for different types of journeys. And that has been a focus of the work that has come to the board in terms of digital journeys, and in terms of the work that Vanessa's team are doing with Roger's team and the wider organisation. Clearly, if we are to be the mobility integrator, then this is a really, really key thing that we need to push on with. And it's really, really important that that work continues as we move forward.
Okay. Very good. Any other questions?
I'll just have one minor question, Madam Chair. Page 25 of board books under Lagoma refers to outside the lead driver of CCTV related requests. What's driving the CCTV? Is that police looking for information, or is it?
It's a very good question, Wayne. And it's one that we've been kind of raised its head again, given the time that it consumes and all those sorts of things in terms of Lagoimas. Vanessa, did you want to talk to what drives that? I have a feeling, but I'd better you're closer to it than I.
A big driver of it is people losing stuff when they're travelling around on public transport, for one. Another driver is, and so they want to recover their goods that they've actually lost. Another driver is when there's been some kind of violence or aggression actually occurring on a bus as well, and people are wanting to find out what's happened there. And also requests around things like red light running as well. But it's predominantly around lost items.
Okay, thank you. You know, as CCTV becomes more prominent, you know, through enforcement and things like that, we probably need to have a look at how we manage this going forward. Yeah.
Shane, did you have other thoughts on it?
Yeah, thanks, Vanessa. Look, Wayne, I think that's right, and I think we've historically had some conversations with the board about, we have an ability to charge for Lagoimas at some point. And there are some CCTV requests that I'm aware of that relate to insurance companies around accidents and crashes and things like that. And so the question becomes, at what point, if ever, do we seek to recover some of that cost, as well as you say, Wayne, as our network just expands and the population expands, the number of requests is going to grow and grow and grow. And we've seen that over time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Wayne. Yes, Kylie.
Right. Thank you. Just in terms of page 38 on board books, we talk about rail service performance being impacted during the month, but I'm really interested in the freight train conflict. We reference an overhead buying issue, but I guess I understand the staff absenteeism, but when we're trying to drive increased patronage and we have full services back on, so I just understand the freight train conflict, please.
I can take that, Shane, if you wish.
Yes, please, Mark. I couldn't quite pick it up either, so but I think you're best placed to handle it.
So I can't remember the exact one that's referenced here, but typically freight train conflicts are late running freight services through the network, which ultimately impacts obviously on the rest of our services. In the last few weeks, there's also been, actually the weekend, there was a freight train derailment at Weary Depot, which prevented us from putting on a full 20-minute peak service on Monday. So freight, because it's a shared network, the freight services obviously have a significant impact if something happens.
How do we control and influence freight train performance?
Well, ultimately we can't control it, but we've got management governance meetings set up now with QRL, which looks at their performance. I can certainly pick up the phone to the COO and the current acting CEO, and I know AR are now taking it on themselves to actually formalise these incidents in writing, and I've been pushing their CEO to do that.
Thank you.
I just had I had one comment and one question. So it was very heartwarming to see that through public transport we had been able to enable a number of whānau to go from Otara to Devonport for an outing. I was, and it was the first time they'd actually been to Devonport. So, so it did actually strike me that there's probably quite a big opportunity for some of our community outreach in these territories. But it was a, it was a really nice story. And the question, I guess, is how do you learn to use public transport when you never use public transport? And we should never underestimate the barrier to entry being simple familiarity and actually being told how to do it, shown how to do it. And that goes for every part of the Auckland community. The question that I've got is there was a very significant handover of our rail operation to the Auckland One Rail that happened in January. We did a lot of work on risks associated with that, and we have heard nothing, which I would say tells us everything that we need to know. But I would actually just like to have some comment on how it's gone. That might be you, Mark.
Thank you. And actually, I might get Roger Murphy to make a comment in a minute as well. We've done an internal audit through Roger's team. Obviously, there's some areas of improvement, but they have found that we went extremely well. Through Stacey and her team, we've set up the right people, the right competence, aligning to AOR. There was some difficulties, some complications, but we worked through that. Probably the biggest risk I was concerned about was their income relationship with RMTU, the union, and particularly through Stacey's team, been able to guide them on that as well. So very pleased with how it's gone. We've got a couple of contractual discussions which we're going to have with them to make sure they're delivering the full scope and make sure we're sending the messages properly to start off with. But yeah, we're overall pretty pleased. Roger, would you like to make any comments on the internal audit?
Yes, I think from our point of view, when we looked at it, the risks were called out early, identified early, the mitigations were put in place. We got a good result when we went through the audit. There are some learnings to go forward and how we manage the contract going forward and the processes that we'll pick up there. But overall, the audit result was a good one, was a satisfactory one. I think the biggest thing here, to your point, Chair, was that the risks were identified early and therefore we could put the mitigations in place and the activities in place.
Thank you, Roger.
I just had a small reminder really. I read about the Browns Bay parking plan and a surprise, I don't know if anybody else, 2,800 submissions from the community, and what a reminder it is of that community engagement around this issue. I'm wondering whether, are we learning anything in here from the community and that kind of response, what's coming back? Is that what we expected? It seems right. A reminder of what it might mean going forward as we roll out broadly. Yeah.
Okay, right, well, let's, thank you, that report is now received, it's agreed by the board. Let's now move on to item 10, the signs bylaw.
So, on cue. We are slick.
That's right, I'll just fine.
Welcome, Andrew.
It's good to see you in person.
Science by law. So I want to acknowledge we've got Terry Segru from Service Delivery, who's on the call. Who's really helped and led it from AT's perspective, and also Paul Wilson and Steve Hickey from Auckland Council, who've been leading the project. What this signs bylaw is about is combining 3 bylaws into a single bylaw: AT's signage bylaw, AT's election signs bylaw, and Auckland Council's signage bylaw. It's a mirror bylaw, so Auckland Council and AT's bylaws will have identical wording. And the reason for that is because we both have a part to play in this space, and it's all a bit fluidic and difficult. And so we're putting it all in one place so that it's easier for everybody to understand how signs work. It's a one-stop shop for all signs. Darren and Kylie can speak to it with incredible knowledge and expertise because they were on the hearings panel associated with it. The focus was not on a revolution in this space, but consolidation, making sure it's still fit for purpose and ensuring the rules are in place that work from our perspective as Auckland Transport, making sure that signage doesn't present a safety risk to the operation of our transport system, be it signs getting in the way of pedestrians, signage distracting drivers, etc., etc. So that has been the focus. There was a lot of feedback, but it was nothing in terms of huge changes. There was feedback from, for instance, manufacturers around signage sizes and things like that. But overall, pretty straightforward. And so we're seeking approval of it today. Council's governing body is also approving the sign bylaw today, this afternoon as well. And then we go into force tomorrow because our current signage bylaw actually expires on Saturday. So we do need it, if possible, today. But happy to answer any questions. And Terry and Steve and Paul are here for any detailed technical questions. And I'm sure Kylie and Darren can also assist if necessary as well.
Okay, are there any questions or comments? It's a good full report.
Just have one, just beyond the actual consolidation of everything into one place, the material changes on top of the consolidation, we must have some material that may pique the public's interest.
Yeah, good question. Terry or Steve, would you be able to answer that one if that's okay? If you could give us sort of the top couple of changes that the public would most be interested in associated.
Thank you, Andrew. It's Steve Hickey here from Auckland Council. I'll just start off with a couple that spring to mind, and then Terry and Paul may be able to expand on it. So you've already mentioned that some of the sign sizes are going to change. So the sizes of signs on walls in heavy industry zones are increasing by a square metre, and there have been some modifications to the sizes of signs in residential zones and other zones. The other thing I think which is a reasonably major change is that the area where portable signs are prohibited in the central city has been expanded and now includes the entire city centre zone. So for instance, Wynyard Quarter and Karangahape Road. So I'll stop there and I'll pass back to, I'll pass to Paul or Terry if they have anything further to add.
Okay.
Terry, yeah, no, I don't think there's anything much else, but I'll let Paul also speak up.
Thank you. The only other thing I was going to add was obviously we're in an election year and there are election sign sites. There's no changes to those, but obviously there will be some interest in election signage this year, and we will address those as we have in previous election cycles. Thank you.
Right, well, we've got a comprehensive report and clear recommendation. Is that agreed by the board? I will take a mover and a seconder. Kylie and Mark, thank you. That's approved by the board. Great. Thank you. Let's now move on to item 11, which is activities in the road corridor bylaw.
So this one is looking for your approval to this bylaw. We've had some correspondence in the last 24 hours from Councillor Sayers on this matter. So I might ask Andrew just quickly to summarise that and what we recommend we do about it, and then open up for a conversation.
Cool. I'll just talk about the bylaw as well, just briefly. So this one as well is consolidating 5 legacy expired or soon to be expired bylaws into a single bylaw, some of which predate Auckland Council and Auckland Transport. It covers a wide range of aspects, so livestock movement, trading, events, filming, for instance, also the operation and management of our shared e-scooter and shared bike systems as well. And what we did was we took it out and got a lot of, not a huge amount of feedback, but a lot of very detailed feedback, and made a number of changes as a response to that. I think the most interest came from livestock owners and operators, because what we were doing was we were taking a Franklin bylaw and a Rodney bylaw, merging them, updating them, aligning them with latest government practice as well, and feedback from industry. We've had a situation with this one, which Jenny alludes to, where we have the support for the bylaw from Rodney Local Board, Franklin Local Board, Federated Farmers, and various other groups. But there are some community members in Rodney who Councillor Sayers has brought to our attention, who feel that their participation in the consultation process wasn't reflected in the final report to the board. They have some questions around, why do we need a bylaw and things like that. I think it's all answerable, and we are confident that we follow the special consultative procedure that Council has set out for us in this bylaw. But we're very happy to conduct a review of our processes to make sure that we've done the right thing, and any other steps as necessary to satisfy Councillor Sayers that his constituents' voices have been heard in this.
So could you just let us know what are the actual issues, and were they traversed as part of the hearings in the written submissions, and what changes were made as a result?
Yeah, and this is an interesting one because these people participated in one of four focus.
No, the issues. Just go.
Oh yeah, sure. The issues. So in terms of the issues that were raised by these constituents in the focus groups, one was, why do we need to have a bylaw in the first place? And Tracy Burkham from Service Delivery explained the rationale for that it is about not creating problems for people who are delivering the right thing, but the movement of livestock has a potential to create a safety risk for other road users if not managed correctly, and we need the ability to manage that. Another question was how many people are complaining about livestock movement, and are they people who have moved to the country from the city and don't have a reverse sensitivity issue? And we have explained as best we can about the number of complaints that was provided as a response, but we don't have the ability to give out sort of details of, oh, it was Sandra who complained and she just moved here, for privacy reasons. And then also there were broader questions around why should we have to pay for getting approvals to move livestock? Why should AT have rules around livestock movement? Why are the government's own rules not enough? In terms of paying for it, I guess we've got the ability to be lenient and careful in terms of fees, but also at the same time, there is a cost to Auckland Transport in generating a permit, and it is normal practice for that to go to the person who requests a permit, just as we do for anything else like a residential parking permit. And also in terms of the question that they raised around why is government regulation not enough, there's two answers there. The first is that the government is reviewing COPTM, which is the process by which livestock movement is regulated across the country. And we want to make sure that we have our rules in place to provide clear guidance to people on that. And the second is that we simply have, in Auckland Transport, a view that, as is consistent with our ability to set bylaws in the first place, there are some provisions we have that are requirements over and above those that are set nationally in order to provide additional safety benefits to the travelling public and to the livestock owners themselves as they move across the network. So that's the rationale for the bylaw.
And as I recall, there are some changes with respect to general movement versus driving.
Absolutely. That was a clear piece of feedback that everyone provided to us, because originally we put crossing the road and moving along the road with livestock as one set of requirements, and the feedback strongly from everybody was, no, they are very different things. So we have now in the final bylaw split them out. There is a far more, we've kept the provisions around moving along the road, droving, because that has a much longer interaction with traffic and the greater risk for safety issues, whereas stock crossing is a far easier situation. We're not requiring people to manage that process and not requiring all sorts of other changes that we were proposing originally in that, so it should be simpler, and that's satisfying hearing.
Thank you. Yes, I have got Tracy. Tracy, want to make a comment? Tracy.
Hi everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. Is my microphone working okay?
Yes.
Grand. I just wanted to add to that, Andrew. Thank you for that summary. I wanted to point out that I think there was some misunderstanding where some of the farming groups thought we were charging to move stock along the road, which we're not. They won't require a permit for that. The permit is required if they wish to graze the road corridor. And we've also heard their comments that actually when they do graze the road corridor and weed control, so we were planning not to have a fee for that particular permit. We also don't expect there to be very many of them, as many farmers don't now, for road safety reasons, graze the berm like they used to. But we have been sensitive to not burden, but rather providing ourselves with the ability to manage the very rare occasion where people are not doing what they're supposed to do.
Okay. Right. So, are there any other questions from the board?
Just one for context, if I may. Do livestock movements appear in our DSI stats at all?
Oh, that's a really good question. So we had the safety team go back and identify DSI stats. We have got the ability to break down that, and we've identified, I'm quoting from memory, so I'll check after that and confirm with you, but I believe in the last 10 years there have been 25 accidents on the road involving livestock in the Auckland region. But I'm not sure whether they've led to deaths or serious injuries, but there have been 25 crashes involving livestock in the last 10 years. So we do have the ability to drill down in that data. We just don't tend to report it.
Thank you. So look, going back to you, Jenny, is there an amendment to the resolution?
Yes, what we suggest to the board is that we ask for your approval for the bylaw today, but subject to a process audit across the process that we've run for consultation for preparing the bylaw, to give you comfort that we have done the right things. We've uncovered if we haven't. So the approval today could be subject to a satisfactory process audit on the consultation process to satisfy Councillor Sayers' concerns.
Will you have the time to do that, given this is 30th of May? Sorry, will you have the time to do that, given this is being enacted on the 30th of May?
Yeah, we've already got it underway. If we want to go with it, so yeah.
And so this is someone outside Auckland Transport?
It's been run through our legal team. We're getting external advice, yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And can that advice, perhaps the review of that advice be delegated to myself, and who was my fellow hearing?
It was Wayne.
Wayne, to myself and the deputy chair. Okay. So subject to our review and the review of the advice, and not throwing up any issues of significance, this is recommended for approval. Is that agreed by the board? Yes. Can we have a mover and a seconder again? It's a bylaw. Mark, Wayne, thank you. We can now move on to item 12, culture survey results and brief.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Directors. I hope to have Tash, Brett Bishop from our Culture and Transformation team, and Neil McGregor, from Human Synergistics New Zealand are joining us. So I'm not sure if I can see, I think they.
Tash is
Shane,
Shane.
in the room. Yeah, we're on 10 o'clock, so we'll just follow up with Neil and just check that he's
can pop on, join us earlier. I did send a message earlier giving them a heads up that we were likely to come on earlier. We'll just double check that we can get Neil and Shane.
Yeah, that's cool. Thanks, Tash.
It was on for 10.
Give them a couple of minutes and I'll start, or a minute and I'll start, I think.
Come.
Sorry.
Just waiting for, I guess, for the viewpoint culture survey, 2 externals, which Joe was just sorting. Or just waiting for your 2 additionals, Brett and Neil.
I'll let them know.
Yeah.
We're good to go.
Is there something we can handle while they come on?
You want to do item 13, Chair, perhaps?
Okay, do item 13. Is Andrew or Nathan here?
Andrew's here.
Okay, Andrew. We're now dealing with proposed amendment to speed limits bylaw. The minor changes you've identified in your report.
Morena, thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. This one hopefully won't take too long and might well serve to be a good buffer until we wait for our other guests to arrive for the previous item. So, look, I'll frame this up very quickly. We were going to have Nathan and Melanie join us. I'm not sure that they're needed. I can probably answer most of the questions, but if they are online, then great. Or if they do join us, great. The board will probably recall that it has created the Auckland Transport Speed Limit Amendment Bylaw 2022, and they did so at their 31st March board meeting, which effectively brought those tranche 2 speed limits into effect. In the implementation phase, as the team have been implementing, they've picked up that there are some inconsistencies with a few of the roads with respect to timing of implementation, and the board may also recall that we did propose phased implementation, so it wasn't a big bang implementation. In working that through, we have picked up a few issues, and what we're really looking to do today is to address that with the board and get some minor changes agreed, as outlined in the report. Those changes predominantly relate, all bar one as I recall, relate to timing changes, purely to timing and implementation changes, and will make it more intuitive and easier for customers to kind of obviously understand speed limits related to the surrounding areas as they travel around our network. So they really are common sense changes. There's not a huge number of them. I think they affect all up about 40 roads out of the 800 plus that we've made changes to. And we're asking the board today just to make those minor amendments, which the team will then continue with in terms of the implementation and rollout of the bylaw and the changes.
Thank you.
Just a question, Andrew, but as far as you're aware, does this have any significant impact for any of the communities that we are working with, or any of the communities affected by the changes? Is there likely to be a level of concern about any of these changes from any of those communities?
So great question, Abby. No, we're allowed to make this change by way of notification if the impact is considered to be minor or insignificant. That is outlined to some extent in the report, and probably the best thing for me to do is draw your attention to clause 19 in the report, which effectively outlines our assessment of the significance of this change, which we don't deem to be significant, and therefore we're asking the board to make this decision on the basis of that notification and consider it to be minor. Sorry, Abby, does that answer your question?
It answers it enough.
Okay, any other questions? Very good. If we could, so we've got some clear recommendations here. That, are you able to move that, Debbie?
Yes, can we can.
And seconded? Yep. Kylie? That's agreed by the board? Yep. Yes, thank you. Now, are we ready for our culture survey?
Yeah, we're having issues with the link, so I might just forward the meeting.
Perhaps we can get to the item 14. Permits. Consents. It's a longer story about how much better processing has become.
Madam Chair, you're moving at such pace. We're trying to keep up with all the attendees. We're just waiting on for Susan Parks and one other member of the team, and in Mark Lang's absence, I'm just going to frame it up. We're racing around. We're scrambling to get all the right people.
Well, in the because it's a great story of really adding a huge amount to the customer offer. Can I suggest that we actually move to, and although there's no discussion, can I suggest we move to the monthly transport indicators, and then could somebody just tell me when we have our external invitees present, and we will move back to those items. So we've got our monthly transport indicators, which of course are for March, and it would be helpful for us to have some commentary on what has changed since. And since we've got a little bit of time, I do have one question that you may be able to answer. Right, I'm just scrambling to get Andrew back.
I'm here, Jenny.
Oh, great. Hi, Andrew.
You get to see me virtually now. You've already seen me in 3D.
He's everywhere.
I'm everywhere. I'm always watching. If I'll give you some commentary. I think there's some key things just to articulate for March that are quite important. One thing that we've been noting throughout, the pandemic period is the reduction in use of public transport. And the reduction to an extent in cycling, though far less. One thing that's also been interesting that we want to highlight is there's been a reduction in utilisation of our car parking assets as well. So car parking utilisation is at its lowest point in the time that we've been recording. But there is some good news as well. Some of the items for the results in March have actually moved from not being met to either being met or exceeded, which is some really good outcomes. So we're starting to see some things turning around. So the number of high-risk intersections and sections of road addressed by the safety program has moved from not met to exceeded, which is fantastic. And the changes from previous year in DSIs on the local road network has moved to met. And the percentage of road assets in an acceptable condition has moved to met, as have road maintenance standards across the region. And the percentage of footpaths in acceptable condition has moved to met as well. And the percentage of formal complaints within 20 working days has now been met for the first time since that new measure was introduced. So there is some good news stories in amongst the other things that are not quite as good that we've been aware of for quite some time. That's the key stuff from me, and I'm happy to attempt to answer questions.
Okay, well, just a general comment. It would be useful to have, there is some commentary. Could we have a little bit of commentary on how the half price fares are going? I know it's covered in the but it is very, the commentary, if I can just high level it, and I would just like to know what our response to this is that our existing customers are travelling more. There is not a 100% return to this central city travel patterns. Working from home seems to be now pretty much embedded as a medium to long term some of the time. So we have got car traffic pretty much back to its pre-COVID level, and we have got public transport with the very generous government half price offer, resulting, along with general recovery, resulting in a significant uplift of public transport, but still a long way short of our pre-COVID level. And we do not appear, this is the great thing about our hot card, because we can track what's happening with it, we don't appear to be recruiting a lot of new people to public transport. That's what I've taken pretty much from all reports. And I just wanted to, I guess it would be useful to hear what our next move is in terms of increasing public transport uptake, bearing in mind there's plenty of capacity, and now we're actually having the roading system and congestion levels are starting to get back to pre-COVID levels. If you're not ready to talk about that, that's fine, but because I know we're in our open meeting, but if we are doing some work in this area, it would be really helpful to hear how we're approaching this.
One of the big things that we've got underway is our mall activations. So Sylvia Park, Monaco, Albany, I think St Luke's, and picking up on your point earlier about people being familiar with how to do PT, we've got an intensive amount of activity using our customer service people going into the malls to teach people how to use the cards, how to travel, iPads to do journey planning. So that's the next phase of it. We have had a big increase in card sales. I know there's some debate about whether or not it's people replacing old ones or not, but I think that's really healthy growth, and I think the $5 price point is the way to go there as well. But the next big wave is face-to-face in the malls, getting cards in people's hands and teaching them how to travel. So that's, yeah.
Has that program started?
It's just about to start.
It's about to start.
Yeah. So we can let you know when it's all active and live.
Just a follow-up question, if you don't mind, Vanessa. Are you continuing to see kind of more outsized growth in travel from the south? I think that's one of the things we talked about. Is that a trend you're continuing to see?
It's mostly card sales coming from the south. But I think part of the challenge has been some of the cancellations and some of the network connectivity. So we start matching those things up, and we've got a much more powerful proposition. But I think, Mark, do you want to add anything?
Sure.
Only if you want to. What did I miss?
Well, actually, a little bit of good news. In the last 2 days, we've seen the highest daily patronage for about 9 or 12 months. It was 60%. It's not up there compared to Christchurch and Wellington, as the mayor keeps pointing out to me. We're about 10% or 15% below the recovery in Christchurch and Wellington. But if you look back over the last 9 months, because we had the second wave or the Omicron wave, huge lockdowns, we will struggle to recover back to their levels in the very near future. So that's good. So on Tuesday we carried 218,000 people. That's the highest in a long time. And just as the team did a little bit of analysis, it would appear that the last 2 weeks the weather's been a little bit worse than what it has been. Now in the past we never quite saw a correlation, but I think that there's potentially a bigger correlation now to poor weather, because people have got the bigger opportunity to work from home if they want to make the call. So we're just starting to do some of that analysis as well.
Interesting. Very helpful. Great. Okay. So look, I think that we've taken the luxury of having some discussion on the transport indicators. We will now move back to item 12, the Viewpoint Culture Survey results debrief.
Thank you, Madam Chair. as directors, as I alluded to, we've got our guest with us. Well, Brett's works for us, and he's been leading the charge internally on from Tasha's team, and also Neil McGregor from Human Synergistics New Zealand, whose intellectual property and expertise has been used to independently assess the culture of Auckland Transport since the baseline assessment was done in 2018. The paper in front of you provides a summary of results from the most recent 2022 February survey, and I know several of you had the opportunity to attend a workshop with Neil around a month or so ago and have a conversation with him about that. Look, this kind of comes about, its journey started in late 2017, early 2018. The board at that time had a very, very strong desire to see shifts in the organisation's culture. And as a result, management undertook that baseline assessment in 2018. The tools are highly credible. You'll see in the report that over 4 million people worldwide have completed the survey or used the tool, and that provides us with a really strong basis to understand how we compare with in our own industry, public, private sector, and internationally. But it's also been hugely helpful because what it does is it links cause and effect in terms of what we do to shift the dial in terms of culture. So after 2018, we conducted another assessment in 2020, and as I say, we've just completed the February 2022 survey, and that therefore provides us with trends over time. In short, the results are very positive, and I'll get Neil to talk a little bit about what he, as the expert, has found. But it also says to us there are further opportunities to continue the journey, which must be seized from my perspective if AT is to deliver on its objectives and become an even better place to work in what are quite challenging times and circumstances. I'm going to hand over now to Neil, who will just provide a short summary of his report or his letter, which sets out the findings that are in attachment 1 of your report. And then we'll directly pass to Tash, who'll talk through the next steps in the management response. So over to you, Neil. Thanks for coming along.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for the invitation, Shane. Morena, folks, thanks very much for having me. You've got the paper in front of you. Would it be useful for me to share any visuals at this stage, or is the paper in front of you sufficient?
The paper for us.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Yes, the paper for us.
Sorry, I'm not.
It's sufficient, Neil.
It's sufficient.
Sorry, Neil, the paper's sufficient. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. So the benchline results in 2018 that were undertaken showed a huge amount of opportunity for Auckland Transport with respect to its culture. I think it's really important to understand why is this actually worth pursuing. And simply put, culture is a key ingredient to the execution of a strategy. Any organisation that is attempting to achieve something achieves that through people, and so the leadership and culture of an organisation is absolutely critical to that achievement. 2018 to 2020, Auckland Transport put in place a number of tactics and strategies to improve their culture, and the paper identifies the changes which occurred over that time, and those changes were significant and they were impressive. Still a lot of work to be done. Then so 2020 to 2022, and I think it's important at this stage to introduce the context of a COVID environment. This we work with a large number of organisations, and what COVID did was identify organisations whose leadership was prepared to be flexible and malleable, deliver what leadership was required to deliver, but in very different ways. And so what the 2022 result for AT has shown us is a huge growth in the leadership capability within AT. Remembering that the response rate was incredibly high for this survey, about 88%. And so the purple bars on the causal factors indicate a huge growth in leadership over this time. This is pretty impressive. There's growth across almost all of the causal factors during this period, and that would have taken significant focus. These things do not change willy-nilly, to use a technical term. They have to be done intentionally. So the results over this COVID period, the change that's been achieved is excellent, to be honest. If I'd have seen these results in any organisation, a small organisation, I would have been impressed. In a large organisation, that's very impressive indeed. But in a large local government organisation, that's super impressive. And I say that not because it's a local government organisation, but because they're complex organisations. And so to achieve this change in such a complex environment, throw in COVID, is an amazing effort. And I've already signalled an intention to Shane and Tash that we would like to learn more about this and turn this into a bit of a case study, because this is worth sharing, because it'll help other people to learn about what is possible. In quick summary, when we look at the journey from 2018 to 2022, the constructive styles of culture have changed 19.75%. This is in your paper. The passive styles have reduced 21.75%. The aggressive styles have reduced by 24%. This is an amazing effort, and the reason for this is because of the way that business is done. So the way we do things around here is represented by the causal factors, and 24 of the 31 causal factors had statistically significant improvement, and you only get that by focusing on them and taking the appropriate action. So that's outstanding, and therefore the 11 of the 12 outcomes of culture, 11 of them have also significantly improved. This is, in my personal opinion, this is outstanding. What questions or detail would you like me to cover?
Well, perhaps I could just start with one, because obviously you do this kind of work with other organisations. If you were to characterise the impact on culture of organisations of COVID, how has it impacted organisations?
It's actually an interesting question. COVID itself impacts organisations in the way they conduct their business, but it doesn't necessarily impact them in respect to the quality of their business. There will be some industries which are exceptional to that, but in essence, COVID is just a situation. It's up to the leadership and the culture of an organisation to adapt to that situation. And some organisations didn't, and their results have declined. Some organisations maintained their current status quo, and a few organisations have actually prospered and grown. And we've seen this in the same industries. So organisations in the same industry have gone backwards, stayed the same, and gone forward. It's not COVID, it's not the industry, it's the leadership and the people in the organisation. They're the ones who decide how to respond to the situation.
And you're just interested in how this flows through to employee value proposition. I'm just really aware that one of the consequences of COVID is it's harder for everybody to get and keep people. So just wondered what your comments on that were.
Yeah, it's a great question. An organisation's culture is critical to an employee value proposition. I can recount many cases where people have left an organisation for money and then come back knocking on the door 6 to 12 months later because it just wasn't worth the money to work in organisations which took them for granted and didn't treat them very well. So we've seen this thing which is touted as the Great Resignation. I believe that a lot of this is based around the fact that now that people have put up with the COVID situation for 2 years, they're aware that they have choices in the way that they live their lives. And those organisations that respond constructively to that will more likely attract people to work for them. So culture is king when it comes to your employee value propositions.
Okay. Any other questions?
Good. Can you hear me okay?
Thank you, yes.
Wonderful. I'm trying to project my voice across the table. A la Putin. But anyhow, I hope you're well. I've been fortunate. I've done a bit of work with Nick and Tash and the people and culture team. So just wanted to acknowledge your support and the work that you and your team have done. I had a question just around our cultural values. Oahatanga, Manaakitanga, Te Akitanga, Whanaungatanga. In the survey, did you see a resonance or an alignment of those values with the culture of the organisation? Thank you.
Yeah, another good question. We absolutely do see a resonance. In fact, more than a resonance, we actually see a strong correlation. And in fact, we linked, and should I say the Auckland Transport team, linked the values to the circumplex quite strongly in a series of vision sprint workshops, which we did back in 2020. And the values are, I would say, are an excellent fit to the model itself. I actually have that presentation linking those, if you would like me to forward that to the board at a later stage, so you can actually see the mapping that was done back in 2020. It's an important piece of work so that people can understand that we're using one language. There may be some different words involved, but when we're working on the culture and we're talking the human synergistics, how culture works model, and we're talking the values of AT, we're talking one language. So that's an important synthesis of those concepts.
Thank you very much, Neil. I really appreciate that. And if we can get that report through to the People and Culture Committee, the independent validation of what we see happening internally in the organisation is really important, Neil. So thank you again. And I think it's also important that as chair of the People and Culture Committee, I acknowledge the work that Shane's done leading this cultural transformation since 2018 and ably supported by Tash and the rest of the team. A lot of work does go in behind the scenes. It doesn't just happen organically, and it's part of a very clearly thought out and articulated and implemented process. So appreciate your report back, Neil. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the recommendation.
Oh, sorry, Wayne's got it.
Oh, sorry, Wayne.
Wayne, you're on mute.
You're on mute, Wayne.
Yeah, thanks, Adrian. I'd just like to support what Jim's just said. I think we can be very proud of our executive team. And I think back to when we first had COVID and they immediately mobilised to look after the customer look after the supply chain and look after our people, and I think we've just gone from strength to strength since then. Neil, question for you. We know that with both Shane and Tash are leaving the organisation. So, you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, you can. Leaving the organisation. So, what should the executive and the board focus on most over the next few months as we those two significant leaders of this cultural progress move on?
First and foremost, leadership is critical. Leadership drives culture, culture drives leadership. Leadership as a behavioural concept exists throughout the hierarchy of an organisation. But the recruiting decisions that you make as a board to fill those two roles are hypercritical. If the people who replace Shane and Tash are in themselves constructive individuals who understand the value of culture and executing strategy and delivering to the City of Auckland, then you'll have done a great job. That is a key decision. So no pressure, it's all on you. Moving forward from a content perspective, the thing I like about the Auckland Transport project is while Shane and Tash have led the project, the accountability for culture has been transferred to the people. It's appropriate to say in this forum, you're not stuck in traffic, you are the traffic. It's true of culture as well. You're not stuck in your culture, you are your culture. And so when you see things which are counter to a constructive approach, then use the values, have a conversation, but have a constructive one. And I think that what we've seen over the last 4 years is a lot of people, many are growing into it at the moment, but we've seen a lot more people take ownership of the culture, and it's their culture. And I think it's really important that that's acknowledged as well. While it's well led, the people within the organisation, all of them are responsible for what's happening. And so as you replace two very effective leaders, we need people who can do the same thing, not try and, change done to people doesn't make them feel great. Think about it for yourselves. Change done by people empowers them and makes them feel like their effort makes a difference and that they have some element of control. And so that softly approach, while it might not resonate well with some people, it is actually the sustainable way of changing a culture to be more effective, but also sustainable. That recruiting decision, sorry, it's a long answer, but that recruiting decision is imperative.
Thank you, Neil.
She's waiting.
All right, so we've got recommendations to note the management response. That's agreed by the board. Yes, thank you. Now the last item on the agenda was the approval of minutes and consents.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And we have with us, we have Susan Parks, who leads our Kia, which is what is now our Kia program. We have Tracy Burkhan and we have Nancy Rodriguez, who are all part of the team who have led that. I'll just frame this up and then I'll hand over to them. Look, the genesis of this is around March. It was May 2020. That's how long ago it was. We talked about our response to COVID, and there was two kind of limbs to that response. One was our actual response in terms of crisis, and the second part was our strategic business response to COVID-19, which is around how we use this to generate both a financial response and how we adapt and use this to deliver improvements across our organisation. One of those projects, which we've been using adaptive ways of working, such as Agile, and led by cross-functional teams has been this one on approvals. And we've put this on the agenda today, to give you a sense that this has not lost its way, but to give you a sense of reporting back in terms of progress in this regard. A lot of good work is being done. More work still to be done, but it is work that will help us in terms of Aucklanders' views of dealing with us on a day-to-day basis. So if I hand over to Susan, Nancy and Tracy.
Good morning. Thank you, Shane. We've been working on this particular initiative, and we've been working not just internally within AT, but one of the processes that we've been working with is with Auckland Council. The collaboration piece is crucial here, and the way we've been collaborating and co-designing is with the ultimate purpose to ensure that we can have frictionless and seamless experience for our customers ultimately. And it's all about our people at the end of the day and how we make this easier for them so that it ensures well-being and we can provide a better experience for them. And we're seeing this in the form of some great benefits. We're seeing some reduced wait time for our customers essentially, as we've introduced some small tools in there. We've seen amazing results in freeing up capacity for our people, whether it's in the call center or whether it's individual teams. And in a small way, we've also contributed to climate as well by introducing a tool for our people internally. We've been trying to simplify some of these processes, and it's not just about making things really easy. It's also about introducing tools. Essentially, every process involves people. And I'll pass over to Susan to talk about how we have done this along the way.
Thanks, Nancy. So the important piece here really is actually dovetails nicely with what was said earlier about the cultural change at AT. And what we're introducing to these teams is actually working with them and supporting them to work in cross-functional teams in new ways, breaking down the silos and making sure there's really a lot of transparency around the process end to end. People traditionally sit in their little silo and don't see that end-to-end process. So it's really kind of opened up new conversations and actually intercollegial relationships across AT and AC, Auckland Council. So it's actually maturity of that approach. As you start to do that, people feel that they are in a better space. And I can hand over to Tracy just to talk a bit about the results of that, as was illustrated on slide 10 of the appendix.
Thanks, Susan. My operational teams have been both the guinea pigs and co-collaborators for a lot of the process change that have occurred during the care work to date. And it's been an amazing journey for them. They have had, when we started digging into these processes, not only were the processes to get an approval from AT to do any work in the road corridor difficult for customers and developers, but also for our own people. They were working with very manual processes, very archaic interaction, and actually interactions we were having with them at all. So when we started looking at taking the friction out of the process, talking to Auckland Council, trying to have a holistic one-in handovers between the council entities, the people started to feel valued and heard and empowered to make these changes. So it's quite nice to have this segment just following the viewpoint results, because the constructive culture in one of the processing teams in particular has transformed between 2020 and 2022. And although I like to take some credit for managing my people in a constructive way myself, I know that this team, the interaction with the care squad has actually contributed to exponential improvement in the constructive culture. If you've got the slide in front of you, there was no blue behaviours 20, and it has improved significantly since then. But we're also seeing a team that is engaged and is having more rewarding customer interactions as well as organisational interactions.
Okay.
Yeah, just want to first acknowledge great work, looks fantastic, and I love the measurements and all of the improvements that's happened internally and the cross collaboration. It's a great piece of work. Just my question is, how are we measuring the customer satisfaction? Are we using an NPS, or how are we getting that feedback?
So we've been running a baseline survey at the start of every process that we do, and understanding the customers that particular team interacts with at the start of the particular timeline. And then after we've introduced a couple of solutions, we then go back and survey and get a sense of where the customers' satisfaction levels are. And that gives us a view of what the customers are telling us. And we've recently done that for the vehicle crossing. We've just about received some results back, and we're going to do the same thing for some of the other processes that we've been working on. So it's a before and an after piece that we will be doing constantly in that space.
Apologies if I missed it, but I haven't seen that in the pack. Was that in the?
We've just come back with the results. We've just only received it. The insights team is working on it at the moment. What we have done is we've looked at the customer wait time, and that's what is showing up in the paper, but not yet the customer satisfaction piece, which we've just received the results for.
Darren, we can supply that to you afterwards if you like, once we've got it all kind of tidied up and packaged up.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
When I put this paper together, which is an incredible shift, together with the culture survey, it kind of says to me something quite special is happening inside AT. And in the meeting this afternoon, I want to have a chat about how we engage externally with the public. I just wonder if this is an opportunity to actually explain to our stakeholders that we have remarkably improved things and the public are getting much better service as a result. These 85% reduction in wait times is profound. We've been seeing that from the hilltops.
Yeah. Well, yes, these entire processes, these regulatory processes, which are really important, that they've done well. Any other comments or questions?
I've got one.
Okay, Abby?
Really interesting to see that this work also needed you to interface with Auckland Council, and you know, you've used an obviously really sophisticated process. Is that matched on the other side by the way the Auckland Council works? Is what you're doing kind of having positive influences both inside and outside into the other organisations we work with? This is what I'm asking.
Yeah, so one of the time-saved pieces affects the call center and council directly. Because of a tool that we introduced, it saves a lot of time for the council call center. Tracy, if you want to add something more to that.
I just also wanted to add that the actual process of engaging with the Auckland Council planning vehicle crossing Auckland unitary plan checks, sorry for the level of detail, it was almost amazing, because we came to them after 10 years and said, how can we do this better, guys? And they said, oh my goodness, we've been waiting for somebody to say that. And so that one of the learnings for me was we really need to talk to them more, and they were extremely cooperative and very collaborative, and so we actually shifted the whole process of approving the Auckland unitary plan provisions into AT to save the customer an enormous amount of time. I think the application was sitting in council for in excess of 20 or 30 days, and we're now performing that check in AT in 2 days, because our inspectors that then go out and inspect the actual crossing are the ones doing those checks. So, but it was a case of we'd never asked, and so they'd never said, how can we do this better? And just going and asking opened a floodgate of collaborative experiences.
Okay. Sorry, Kylie.
Could I ask what's next?
What's next?
If we've achieved this here, what is next? What else is there that we can keep running this across? I know we've got the AT Reshape program.
Yeah. Kylie, I might have a go at answering that, Kylie, because I can. The ladies can comment in more detail. I guess, Kylie, I would have loved to have had the resource to do this at greater pace, and that's that we always want more, and we always would love to be doing more at greater pace. But it goes to customer, and it goes to a lot of things around trust and confidence and all those sorts of things. And you can see we're having success, enormous success in terms of what's being done, and the benefits are are very, very broad, go well beyond customer into culture, and they affect a lot of people. There are hundreds of thousands of transactions a year we have with Aucklanders that probably most of you weren't aware of some of these things that we do, vehicle crossings, approvals, and all those sorts of things, but yet they have a significant impact. So, look, there is still more work to do. It is constrained, let's be honest about it, but I think we've set the foundations now for moving at greater pace as we move forward. Susan, Nancy, did you want to offer anything more specific?
I was just going to say that we're looking not just at some of the processes that are there with interactions with our customers, that are also processes internally to enable our people to move at pace, to interact with our customers. So it could be our internal, enabling our core processes as well. We want to make it less manual and more self-service, to reduce all the time wasted internally. So those are some of the other opportunities we have internally that we're working towards. Yeah, that's down the future.
Okay. Yes, it does. So this is a great example of what a customer-centric approach can actually do, and there must be, every time we have so many transactions with so many of our customers, these process-driven ones, I think to take out unnecessary steps and deliver a significantly better experience for our customers, followed by obviously our staff. It's a win-win. So look, thank you for your great report and the great work, and the great outcome here. So we've just got a recommendation that we note this. That's agreed by the board. I think I did not identify any general business at the start of the session. So that takes us to the end of the open session of Auckland Transport.